Welcome to Epic Conversations. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. I'm Diane, and this is my friend David.
David, being sober.
We're talking off camera about what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about being sober-minded. That is. Are you sober-minded today?
I am. It's a challenge too. Leslie, my wife, will tell you that me being sober-minded is a challenge because God gave me a sense of humor. And I know He loves it.
That's good.
So I do want to talk about being sober-minded.
Yeah.
And in the Bible, in Timothy and in Titus, Paul is giving them instructions on what qualifications a deacon or personality traits a deacon and elder should have. And each one it says they should be sober-minded. Well, you're thinking, well, they drank wine. That's all they drank back then, so maybe they're just not supposed to be drunk. But no, sober-minded means to be void of speculative imagination.
Be void of speculative imagination.
Yes.
Okay? I think sometimes not to worry, but
That
void
would be
of
one. But
speculative
here's the other. If I were to ask you, so Diane, what do you think I'm thinking? And you said, well, you're probably thinking about that new shotgun you want Leslie to buy you. Well, you might be right on that, but you might say, well, you're thinking about, working on your Jeep. No, I'm not thinking that at all. But you made an assumption of what was going on in my head.
That's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, especially if you knew what went on in my head. But honestly, I look at it this way. We talked in a previous one about decision making.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, anytime a decision is made, there's a strong possibility that somebody who is going to be impacted by that decision is suddenly thinking, well, David doesn't care about us, or David's just doing it because of this, or David is thinking that. And I can tell you, odds are, and I've been there, in numerous things, odds are you're completely wrong.
Oh, wow.
But those thoughts that you're having is also what's, making you come to the conclusion that, well, I don't want to do the direction he's giving because the reason he's doing it. And I'm going to give you a real life example that happened to me recently.
Okay.
So at the ministry I worked for, a decision was made to expand our hours. And I was all for part of it, but there was a part of it it's not that I disagreed with it, I just had concerns with it. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I got given the instructions, I talked to my boss. I said, well, what about this? What about this? And he answered the questions as best he could. And I'm like, okay. So I go back to my office, which happens to be our kitchen table right now because of COVID.
You're working at home.
and so I go back and I'm working on a presentation over the weekend that I have to give to my boss on Monday for him to submit to the president of our organization. And part of it had to be how were we going to implement this portion of it. And it was a portion that I just had this angst in the pit of my stomach that I just don't fully agree with it. And so I'm working on the presentation and I get to that portion of it and I type some stuff and I delete some stuff and I type some more stuff. And I've just got this struggle going on inside of me. And the one thing that wasn't there was, our president is thinking this. I never went there because I have the utmost respect for the president of our organization. But, the thought was, well, nobody told him about this. And nobody told him about that. And if he knew that, his decision would probably be different. So I'm struggling with this over the weekend. And I'm finally like, God, what do I do? Because I wasn't in agreement. And because God loves me. And He loves it when I ask a question and then allow Him to answer it, which is always another problem. But, He said, well, did you ask your boss questions? Well, God, I did. Did he answer the questions best he could? Well, God, yeah, he did. You know, are you a ministry plus a business? Well, God, you know we are. And he said, so what's the problem?
Wow.
Because he said, you know, you had questions, you asked them, you got answers. You know, you're a business and a ministry. So what is the problem? If you were still at Cummins Engine Company where you worked for decades, and a decision came down from the top to do this, you may not even get to ask any questions. You may not get to have any say in it, just figure out how to implement it. But because of where we work, you got to do all these things. You got your answers, so what's the problem? And as soon as he said that, I was totally behind it, because what I talked about in the previous one too is the quicker you embrace the change, the quicker you find out if it's going to work. And so I had this whole thought process that I had to go through. You know, I went up the mountain, I came down the mountain, I went up the mountain, I came down the mountain. And so I've been to the other side now. So besides putting the presentation together, 2 weeks ago I had a meeting with all of my leaders. So I had 2 big Zoom meetings, probably 40 people. And I explained what we were going to do. I explained the why behind what we were going to do it. And then I shared with them the struggle I had. You know, so that I needed to get all of them to get any void speculative imagination out of their head on we're doing it for this reason or they don't care about us. I had to show them what I went through because I needed them to, first off, come out on the other side. But secondly, you know, just skim the mountaintops instead of going up and down like I had to. So I had a responsibility, first off, to get rid of all my void speculative imagination, but then lead my people to get to the other side quickly so that we didn't have issues.
You know, that is a good point. You shared or told your people what you went through.
Absolutely.
That's being real. And that's important as a manager and a leader, to be transparent.
It is. But I would add this. The other thing is, as a leader and a manager, we have to remember that in that job title is teacher. And so I can tell you what to do. I can be a manager. I can tell you what to do. Or I can be a leader who just, you know, makes you love doing it with no boundaries. Because the manager, you know, I like to put it this way, if you go bowling, the manager is the one that puts the gutters there, you know, so that you know where you're supposed to be. The leader is the one that shows you where in the lane you want your ball to go so you get a strike. And a leader should have both characteristics. So as a teacher, I could either just tell them, here's what we're going to do, give them the whys and wherefores on it, and hope they got behind it. Or I can share with them how to get to the other side. I could give them the map. You know, that's what I did. I gave them a map. Here's how you get to the other side.
It was like you took the journey first. You said you went up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, down the mountain. And when you shared with them your experiences up and down, and then you leveled it out for them.
And the whole reason for doing the trip was to get rid of the void speculative imagination of why I thought this or I thought that. And it was just sharing with them that because most of them are considerably younger than I am, and I want to teach them because there's going to come another time, whether it be here, whether they leave and they leave the ministry and they go out in the world, there's going to be times that a decision gets made that they may not agree with. And I taught them how to go up and down the mountain and not just jump to conclusions, which is what void speculative, you know, if you have speculative imagination that's not void over here, you just jump to conclusions.
Yeah, that's excellent, David. That's excellent. That is a very good example. That's very good. Thank you.
You bet.
So we want to be sober-minded.
You do.
And not be void of these speculative imaginations.
Yes. So that you can make good decisions like I taught on before.
First one. I like it. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord.